Gary Steinhold from the Cornwall Association. It's a great honor to have Lee Sohl, who, instead of introducing her, I'm going to leave this to you to talk about pets, wildlife, and thank you.
Sounds good. I'll give you a little bit of a background. So I'm Lee Sohl. You may have heard of my name, or I might look familiar. My husband is actually here. He's supposed to be working. He's not a spy. I know he's wearing his dark glasses, but he had his something operated on this afternoon. He didn't even know. He went to the doctor and it's like, what's going to happen? So anyway, he wound up being able to join me. So he is my assistant. He is also an official animal control officer. Originally, he worked with me as an official unpaid, an unofficial unpaid animal control officer. But then we had to all be official, so we have to take regular training and that kind of thing. So he had to get official, but he's still unpaid because if I paid him, it would come out of my salary. So anyway, no questions from you. We moved from Chappaqua, New York, up to Kent 37 years ago. I have to figure because my son is 39 and he was turning 2. 37 years ago, with our 2 kids. Barbara is a teacher in Salisbury, and Peter was living in Brookfield, but he and his family moved to Colorado last year. If my name does sound familiar, I wrote a weekly animal article for the Kent GTD for 20 years, until we have no paper, although they're trying to get it started. I used to do animal programs. Some of you may have seen me at, I know not this library, but I've done them at libraries, birthday parties, that kind of thing. I coached hockey. We've coached hockey for over 30 years, youth hockey. And I do freelance artwork. Oh, I play in Salisbury Band. In fact, I have rehearsal after this. I play in 7 or 8 bands. I play the trumpet. So you might say, oh, sounds familiar, except I wear glasses so I can see my music with that. So anyway, I've been around doing stuff. I have a lot of interests, but I only do fun stuff. The animal program, I also used to do large animal stuff with my llamas and potbelly pigs and that kind of thing, all of which have passed on. So anyway, if the name sounds familiar, we are not the S-O-U-L-E, Souls from Kent. That's another way a lot of people say, oh, I think I know so-and-so, so-and-so. It's like, no, that's different souls. This is my 32nd year being animal control for Kent.
Wow.
I've been doing Sharon. I should have looked it up because, okay, I'm 66. I find that as the years go on, I think that was 2 years ago. And it was really 5. If I think it was 10, you can be sure it was 20. So I think I've been doing Sharon for about 10 years, and Salisbury closer to 5 or 6, and Cornwall since December. I talked to Brad, I've worked with Brad over the years because, when we have a dog on the border, if there's a Cornwall dog near Kent or Sharon, or there's a dog that I find that's near Cornwall, we would communicate. And I asked him before I took this job on, I said, well, about how many calls do you have a year? And he said, about 50, which isn't a lot. And I thought, okay. So I counted today to see how many calls I've had so far since December. So December through April 24th, I've had half that already. 25 calls. Wow. So I don't know if it's because I'm throwing my number out there, my phone number, which is fine, that's why I'm here. Most of it's been advice. Sometimes it's been missing pets. Sometimes it's been found pets. If you're on Facebook, you may know we had 2 fantastic successes in Cornwall yesterday. Yes. The Great Dane who was missing, who got away. We had posted all over. I put the woman in touch with a friend of mine in Sharon who does dog recovery, and she's amazing. I've worked with her before. and she set up bait stations and cameras so they could see where the dog was. And now these days with blinks and I forget what the other names of the cameras, but so many people have home cameras. Somebody contacted me, they saw it on their home camera, saw the Great Dane go by. So all those sightings made a difference for my friend who was doing the dog recovery to know where to set up the cameras. And that's all, she does it all volunteer. In fact, this was her vacation week, and that's how she spent it this past week. And the other success was a cat. And while I don't take cats in, if you see a cat and you say there's a cat, strange cat, I say give me a picture, give me a description, I'll post it, I'll write it down in my notes, but I don't pick them up. One really good reason for not doing that is that cats are allowed to roam, whereas dogs aren't. Cats don't need identification. Legally, dogs should be wearing their tags, and both their license and their rabies tag. As I threatened somebody before, somebody says, I'm a dog owner. I know on my phone all the dogs that are licensed in Kent, Sharon, Cornwall, and Salisbury. So before you go raising your hand, Peter, wherever you are, I can find out. I can check by first name, I can check by dog's name, I can check by street. So just saying. But we'll talk about that later. So anyway, that's why cats are different. But under the law, they have a lot of freedom. So somebody might say, oh no, this poor cat, take it in. And they call me, it's like, let it out because it could be your neighbor right up the road. A lot of times people know who the dogs are because they walk by and the dog's barking, or they see somebody walking a dog on a leash. But most people don't know who has what cats. So that's part of the reason that I don't pick up cats. In my other towns, I have dog pounds, and I don't have facilities for cats anyway. That said, if there was an injured cat, I would pick it up and hopefully find the owner, and if not, then the town will pay, and then I advertise and try and find where it belongs or in a new home. But this cat was lost. The person called me, which was great, because then I post the photo, so people from all over, whatever town, especially if you are on Facebook and come on my animal control page, Cornwall, Connecticut Animal Control, and I have Sharon, Connecticut Animal Control, and I have Salisbury, Connecticut Animal Control, and Kent, Connecticut Animal Control. So people are like, oh, you're right. It seems like you're on Facebook all the time. I said, yeah, it does. I put my phone number, I said, don't just tag me, call me. But I still check. When I'm up in Salisbury, I have band practice tonight, and before I leave, I check Facebook, because sometimes somebody will tag me instead of calling and say, found a dog or lost a dog. It's like, I'm right here. Don't tell me once I get home. By having a cell phone, it's really made such a difference. Cell phone and the internet. So anyway, the cat was gone for 5 weeks. And this is why I tell people don't give up. I know we have coyotes and we have bobcats and everything, but they can, how long was Chrissy missing? 4 months. We had a cat that in the winter, and she was elderly. And on medicine. And 4 months later, Jim used to commute to White Plains. For 20 years he commuted to White Plains. And he saw an ad for a young declawed calico cat. And he said, you never know. It was her. They hadn't had her for long. She was not declawed, and she was not young, but she was a calico. And 4 months in the winter, where she was, So I always tell people don't give up. So I will always post the cats and their pictures, and I keep a record. It sounds like I should be all computerized, but I actually have books, and I write notes in them, or I cheat, because so much of the time I'm in the car, I write a note and then I tape it in the book. So I'm not up there. Oh, and by the way, I also was I just retired from teaching at Kent Center For over 30 years, I've been a teacher, and the last 4 or 5, I was also assistant principal, which is why I talk. So when you might say, 7 o'clock, we were going to ask questions, so you could just stop me. So that's my background. I love animals. I read about animals. Still, from my sisters and I, we used to drive, and instead of looking at license plates or counting, whatever, we were always looking for dogs. So I was kind of meant to have this job. When I got hired 32 years ago, I was a dog warden. That's not what we are anymore. We are actually animal control officers. We are officers of the law. I write tickets, and I do write tickets, not a lot, but I do write tickets.
For what?
We'll get there. Things have changed. A lot of people think it's worse now, I think, because of social media. You're always seeing this missing dog and this missing cat and somebody's macaw. And yes, we've caught 2 macaws. Jim caught one, I caught one, and got them back to their owners. It seems like a lot, rather than just the poster on the telephone pole that they get old and faded and rained on, and you kind of forget it, but you stop seeing it after a while. But on Facebook, it's like, there they are, they're missing, they're missing, they're missing. When I started, I would pick up about 60 dogs a year, 60 dogs a year. Not all of them needed homes. Most of them, there's a guy in Kent, he had 3 shepherd mixes. But they're big and a little scary. And he had them in the basement when he was gone, and every, month or so, they'd break out. And I get these calls, I think there's a wolf in my yard, or there are 3 dogs and I think they're going to chase my child, and all this. They're very nice dogs, so those 3, that could have accounted for 35 dogs that year. No, not really. It wasn't that often, but it was about 60 dogs that I would go and pick up and impound. Now, it was, for all 3 of my towns last year, I think I maybe picked up 17, I'd say under 30. And that was for Kent, Sharon, and Salisbury. Couple of reasons. Social media, sometimes I don't need to go out. You might think, how is she going to get to Cornwall, or to Salisbury in time to pick up dogs? Honestly, if somebody calls me and says there's a dog in their yard and it hasn't been hanging around for an hour or 2, it's not going to be there when I get there. Whether it's in Kent, and I was telling somebody this story. A couple weeks ago, I was at home, I was actually dressed out of the shower and everything, ready to go. And I got a call, and the dog was less than a quarter mile from my house where they saw the dog. I ran out. The dogs were all inside. Yes, I have 14 dogs. And it's okay, Jim. Remember, 6 of them were on your lap this morning. I took a picture. And I rush out, get in the car. Dog was going, was it in somebody's backyard? Did it go in some, did it run home? Probably, because I didn't get another call. So, but if you do see a dog and then I post it, a lot of times then the owner's like, oh, that sounds like, Johnny, and I thought it was in the backyard. No, Johnny's not there, I'm gonna go, and then they get the dog before I ever need to go out. That's part of it. Also, people know better now. Most people are educated about dogs. People don't keep their dogs tied to dog houses anymore. They don't. It's just not accepted. People know not to let them roam for the most part. Most of the time, a dog escapes. Not always. There are some people who say, oh, my dog always stays, always stays in the yard until they don't. So things are way better than they were. So even though you may see on social media a lot of animals missing, it's really way less, at least in the northwest corner, at least in my towns, than it was 30 years ago. We've come a long way. Somebody asked about tickets. So most of my job does not require scooping poop. I know it seems like that's what I would be doing, having dogs and all these pounds, I'd be cleaning runs and all. It's really not. Most of my job is talking to people and trying to solve problems. The dog's barking. How can we stop that from happening? I actually hate barking calls because a lot of times it's neighbors that maybe weren't getting along anyway, because if you're letting your dog bark for an hour, then that's probably not being a good neighbor anyway. Or the person complains because they don't like that person anyway, and the dog thing is a way to, and honestly, I wish it wasn't that way, but it really is. It's, they can be really tricky, and it's a he said, she said. But that's one of the things I can give a ticket for, is nuisance barking, which means your dog barked more than 25 minutes, 3 times in a 7-day period. Because you figure, okay, our dogs. So yes, we have 14. 13 are rescue. I've gotten 2 from breeders in, what's it been, 30 years since Sarah? About 30 years. No, 35 years. See, I told you. We got a pug, and then I recently got my, I'm thinking, I'm retired. I'm going to get myself the perfect therapy dog. Because I did therapy work with my golden retriever and my pug years ago. I thought, that's what I'm going to do. And I got this perfect therapy puppy, the perfect breed. They're all good. Yeah, no, I have a rescue I'm using instead who's going to take his test next week. So it doesn't always work. But anyway, when somebody comes, if I'm outside with the dogs and I have a fenced yard, a real fence, because I picked up too many dogs with the electric fences. I know fences, a lot of people don't like them, or their properties don't lend themselves to that, or they're too expensive, but really it's the only, to me, safe way to go. So I'll be out there with my dogs, and we only have one neighbor, but the delivery people will come, and my guys bark, 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 bark. And I calm them down. They're pretty good. I also teach dog obedience for Park and Rec in Kent, and they're pretty good. But then this one will bark. Weaver, quiet. Then Rory barks. No, Rory, shh. Annabelle then said, well, I better take over. So there's all this barking. It never lasts more than 5 minutes because I'll take them inside. I don't want anybody annoyed with my dogs barking. I don't want to hear my dogs barking. So I take them inside. And 5 minutes would be high. Most of the time I'll do it in less time, unless it's more like popcorn, like, a couple of them, it's like, okay, that's fine. But if you have a neighbor that lets their dog bark, 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 and there's nothing special going on, they're not having a wedding next door, somebody's walking back and forth training their dog in front of that property, then yeah, a dog's going to bark longer. But if they regularly let their dog bark a long time, then there is something that can be done. Call me. What happens though usually is people are so fed up by the time they call me, they just want me to go in and give a ticket. And I prefer that they speak to their neighbor or I speak. Call me, give me the name and number, I'll say, look, I don't even have to give your name. Most of the time they can figure it out, but especially around here, my neighbor. If somebody complained about, if I was complaining about something, my neighbor would know they're the neighbor, so it must be me that's complaining. But I like to talk about, is the dog really barking as much as you think? Because did you time it? For me to give a ticket, it needs to be a written narrative, it needs to have those 3 dates, at least those 3 dates, and times that are at least 25 minutes long. Well, it's 20 minutes, but I try and push for at least 25. And if that all, if they fill that out, then we used to have to get them notarized, but the state doesn't seem to care anymore, so it's like, okay. Then I give a ticket. It's like a speeding ticket, which probably you guys never have had. I might have once. you plead guilty or not guilty, because there's your neighbor talking about it. Sometimes people, oh, I'll give you a video, or listen, can you hear the dog barking? It doesn't work that way. They need to keep track, send me the paperwork, and I give the ticket, and they say it's not true, good, plead not guilty. And if they know it's true, then they can send the $75 into the state. That said, I don't like to do that. I like the person to talk to their neighbor if they can, if they're comfortable. Sometimes people feel intimidated by their neighbors. Sometimes they're honestly afraid of their neighbors. Some of those neighbors I've met, and I can see why they'd be afraid. So then I say, just give me the name, let me talk to them. I hear your dog's barking a lot. Do you notice it? You know, is your dog outside or inside? If it's inside, there's not a lot you can do. But most dogs, there's something you can do. You can bring them inside. Well, they'll tear up, well, then put them in a crate. My dogs, I know what they do when I'm gone. Other than barking occasionally at delivery people, they sleep. If I'm there, if I'm sitting reading, they sleep. 9 dogs I have on the couch with me. And they're just all hanging out. And since we got a Blink camera last year, Jim got a little one that can be inside so we can see what's going on. They sleep. You know, it's fine. They're not running around needing exercise. So I talk to people about that. I give them suggestions, and that's where I go with the barking. The other thing I can give tickets for is roaming. So Connecticut, how are we doing? Connecticut does not have a leash law. And while some towns and cities have leash laws,
nice to hear that.
but there is a law. It's just not a leash law. So you can add that, you know, if your town or city wants a leash law, they can make that happen. But the state law and all of my towns, none of them have a leash law. Most small towns like this don't. What we have is a no roaming law. That means if you see your neighbor walking down the road with their dog on a leash, you're like, good, the dog's in control. But you might see your neighbor walking down, and they're walking, and you know, the dog goes to the bathroom on your lawn, and maybe it, you know, goes up to the next neighbor and barks at their cat. Person's still walking along. That dog could still be legal, other than it shouldn't be on anybody else's property, if it's on voice command. Now, I told you I teach dog obedience. Most dogs are not on voice command the way they need to be under the law. What I tell people is if your dog will come back to you, say if it starts to wander over this way, if they see a kid, a bicycle, a squirrel, a hamburger, anything, if you say, Fido, come, and it comes right back to you, ignores all that, it's legal. You can walk the dog on a public street like that. Have I seen many dogs like that? No. Sometimes the guys, it tends to be guys, that do construction or whatever, and they have their dog and they bring in their truck and it hangs around the site. A lot of those dogs are pretty good. They've just done it since they were little, and they just hang out with their owner. But I also get calls on those dogs, and you know, they wind up here or there, and I think it's that construction guy, and I drive up looking at his, because I don't have any license or phone number, because who knows where they're from. So they're not all like that, but I have seen dogs like that are trained. Also, I've had, when I showed my pug and my golden retriever in obedience, they would do that if I had them on command. But who wants to walk around with your dog on heel all the time? Depends on the dog. So yes, it's legal to have your dog off a leash. That said, there are places that say no. What was it? Oh, I was looking under ordinances. Why was I for Sharon? Oh, for the cat thing. I was looking under, and their Park and Rec has an ordinance that if you have your dog at the park, I can't remember now if it was a leash or it can't go to the bathroom. If it does, you have to pick it up. And that would not be me, by the way. That would be the park and rec people. That's their job to enforce. If somebody's dog goes to the bathroom and they don't clean up after it, that would not be my job. Which is why so many towns don't have that, because who's going to enforce it? Not animal control, and probably not the police, so it has to be. So some park and rec, some land trusts will say that your dog needs to be on a leash, and it really makes sense. I wish I have a lot of issues on the Appalachian Trail. People will let their dogs loose, and not everybody wants to even see. My son-in-law, they've had 2 dogs. They've since passed, and the kids are busy at this age, so they haven't gotten another dog. My son-in-law's didn't grow up with animals. He does not want some dog coming up to him. He just doesn't. And when the kids were little, it would make him a little nervous, understandably so. You should be able to walk on a trail, on a street, without having a dog bother you. It's just respectful, I think. So I much prefer people to have their dogs on leashes, and I actually have stopped people before. Oh, thank you so much for having your dog on a leash. And I look really closely. Thank you so much for having your dog licensed. So those are the main things. It's really, my biggest job is posting and talking. And you can see I'm really good at talking. I promise I'm really good at posting too. So giving advice. Sometimes I'm actually a licensed wildlife rehabilitator, but I've not done that in about 30 years. I keep my license up just because I wouldn't have to go to classes and stuff. If I ever want to do it again, I don't think I do. But I started having nightmares because I was having so many babies, because there aren't a lot of rehabilitators, because you don't get paid, and it's a lot of work, and you're staying up late at night to feed these little mammals. And I started having nightmares. The kids remember, I thought it was one time. The kids remember me doing it more than once, running down the hallway in my sleep with a nightmare, screaming, because I thought baby wildlife, baby rabbits or raccoons or whatever I had at the time, were dying because I forgot to feed them because I didn't wake up. So after 3-4 years of that, I said, I'll just give advice. I don't think I'm going to be on that list anymore. I just can't handle it. So that's when I went into rescue, and I worked with pug rescue for 28 years, and Pekingese rescue, all kinds of rescue. So anyway, I'm great. I give advice about wildlife, advice about barking dogs. So much. That's not a stray cow, right? It lives over there.
It's not on a leash.
Wait, what is it under voice command?
Not even.
There's also nuisance biting, unfortunately. We have lots of, okay, so these are small towns, not a ton of people, but, I think I had probably 2 to 5 bites in each town last year. Those were some of the calls. Even though I don't pick up as many dogs, I have tons of calls. Like I said, 25 in Cornwall, it's only been 4 months or whatever. And Cornwall's been really busy for whatever reason. But the biting is a concern. People just not being careful with dogs. I understand a first bite. Most of the time it really is a first bite. But there are usually warnings, the growling, the nervousness, and the tail. There are all kinds of signs. And Jim and I, it's dealing with dogs for so many years, by choice or by being stuck with me. We have a dog come in the pound, we don't even think about it. We notice the, nervous licking of their mouth, and we notice this or that, so we don't push them. We don't put them in situations that are going to make things, no problem, make things worse. And, but a lot of people, I think they get complacent with their dogs. But dogs are animals. that, you know, we only have so much control. Yes, they're very domesticated. But to put, yeah.
When you finish with that, can you talk about wild animals for a few minutes and
I
then
will.
we'll open up to Q&A?
Yep. Usually there are signs first. And, you know, to take your dog that's, you know, so nice at home to a party where there are kids running around and all, it's just, you really need to know your pet. They need to be comfortable, and sometimes it's just, they'd really be happier at home. Not always, I mean, I usually take at least one dog out trick-or-treating or whatever, and, you know, but I pick the right dog. There are dogs we have that there's no way. They would not be happy, and I would not be happy having to deal with them on Halloween. But a lot of times people are just putting them in a bad situation. So wildlife, it's just more and more. I know people are getting frustrated about the bears, and I was explaining to a friend the other day, using a Kent example. In the same week, I had somebody who was very frustrated that there was a bear in their yard. They wanted somebody to come shoot it because the wife couldn't go take the kids out to the bus stop because of the bear out there. It's a problem, I get it. He wanted somebody to come shoot it. Same week, same town, I got a call. I'm really worried when this bear crosses the road. I'm afraid it's going to get hit. Do you think we could put up a bear crossing sign? So two different viewpoints, depending on probably their experience and their past experiences with bears and their feelings about hunting, etc. And the fear factor. The bears, honestly, whether you agree there should be a hunting season or not, obviously as a wildlife rehabilitator and an animal lover, that's not my choice of where to go, but I do understand why people think that. And don't put it on Facebook because things will get heated. So that said, if people, Salisbury is one of 2 or 3 towns, I think, now that has an ordinance against feeding the bears, and they include garbage and bird feeders. We were at a DEP seminar the other day, and they suggest taking your bird feeders, if you're going to feed the birds, in November, in March, and take them in November. So you can put it out. Yes, I can do this. Take it in March, put it out in November. Somebody I was just talking to tonight takes hers in at night. That's a thought. Although I've seen pictures of bears with bird feeders under their arm, which is really freaky. You know, taking them into the woods during the day. My friend, I hadn't thought about hummingbird feeders, but if you hear about what bears like to eat, whenever they go in a house, they're looking for the ice cream. It's like me. You know, where's the chocolate, where's the ice cream, that kind of thing. And they will drink out of a hummingbird feeder and just down it. And this happened when I rehabilitated too. It was very tricky to get the raccoons. This was before their raccoons were a rabies vector species. You know, I started feeding them out. You know, they started in my bathroom. They were little and cute. And then they were outside in a cage. My kids taught them to climb. And then I started feeding them out further afield. And then eventually they would
feed them
go. But it took a while. You know, they would come and I'd see them climbing up the side of the house and looking in the kitchen window like, you know, where's the food? Bears are the same way. They will return. They smell it. You know, I had somebody in Salisbury call me, very upset, had broken into their, you know, mudroom or whatever. I said, did you have any food out there? And they did. It was in a can, but they could still smell it. So really, that's the food is the biggest problem. The cars. Who is somebody I know just had it.
Oh, the car 20.
And one friend has, I don't know if she just still doesn't lock her car, but I know it's happened. She's in Avon. I think it's happened to her 4 or 5 times. Now she has rowdy boys, so they may be the ones that aren't locking the car. but she's had a bear in her car that many times. I used to keep like dog biscuits or whatever, you know, in the car, thinking, or, you know, a piece of cheese if I knew, say if I went out looking for a dog and I kept some cheese or meat, I'd just leave in the car until I was gonna go out later because I was gonna go past that same direction. Not anymore, I just take it all in. Because you can't take the chance. If people call me about a bear, I do not go out for the bear because anything I can do, you can do too. You know, banging bells, whistles, that kind of thing. I know they're listening to them less, but they're not going to listen to me as I show up as officer, you know, animal control officer of the law. I do have a badge, but no uniform, no truck. But they don't respect that badge. I know, it's
They're
sad.
very habitual though. If they find food, they will be back.
Right. And they make, even the bear near our house that doesn't come to our house, is it the barking dogs? No more than 5 minutes. But we don't leave our trash out, and we actually keep it in the basement, so it's not even in the garage. And we don't have bird feeders or anything. So it continues, you know, we see it, what, once every 3-4 weeks, it goes, you know, we'll see it go through the front yard, comes down the side yard, and it just goes on its way.
Well, we
No
have an
big
apple
deal.
tree, so it sort of hesitates and then it goes on to the
True, that's true. They don't look very good, but to the bear they might look good. And so that's not something I do. I give advice, I do not handle wildlife. I talked to Brad because I had heard the meeting when they were talking about hiring an animal control officer, and somebody was concerned about the wildlife. So I texted him, I said, so is this a big thing in Cornwall? How many times have you had to shoot? Because I don't have a gun. I'm not a big fan of guns. I never would have wanted a gun in, the house with my kids. It's just me. I have shotguns. It's fun. I was a teenager. Don't tell my mother. But it's just not my thing. But so I said, how many times have you, since you've been doing animal control in 20 years in Cornwall, have you had to shoot a wild animal? He said, once. So it's not a regular thing. And that's why we have the DEP and Troop B. And that's what I do. I had somebody in Cornwall, lots of calls, call me about a skunk. And skunks, yes, they can be out in the daytime. Most wildlife can. Raccoons, they'll get away from their babies. They will be out. It's the whole rabies thing as far as being out in the daytime is something on the checklist. It's out in the daytime, plus it's stumbling, it's drooling, and it's chasing me. Of the list, yes, out in the daytime can be a concern. But that alone is not. But this one, it was stumbling and falling down. So I gave her 2 numbers. I gave her Troop B's regular number, because I didn't consider, it wasn't going after her. Otherwise, yes, call 911. I've had that conversation with the Kent resident state trooper, because we did have a rabid fox a couple of years ago that was around town.
At school.
And, kind of near the school, yeah. Or the DEP. The DEP is fantastic, but they can't always get here fast. And the police don't, honestly, people are like, you live in Kent and I'm calling you from Sharon or Salisbury. Most of the time, I can beat the police, because, it's not because of how I drive. It's just they have a lot of calls and I don't have as many, so there's a good chance if I'm available that I'll be able to go right away. Yeah.
Get to the Q&A, see.
Okay, sure.
Are we okay?
Questions?
Was there anything else important you need to go over yet?
No,
Pretty much it.
that's really it. But people will call me about, woodchucks or this or that, and I can give some advice, but usually nothing better than what I could get from the internet. And most of the time, that's what I'll do. I said, well, look, this site says blah, 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 or I'll text it to them or something like that. But And dogs need to be licensed in Connecticut. People tell me they don't know this. But all dogs need, once they're 6 months old, need to be licensed every year. It's not just a one-year thing. And it's interesting with my license list that I can tell if you've ever licensed your dog. I think it goes from, I think they have records from 2016 on. So I can tell if this is, oh, I must have forgotten this year. I don't know about that. So it really is important. Some people say, oh, it's just the government, wanting money. It's not a lot of money. If your dog's spayed or neutered, it's $8 once a year by July 1st.
Proves you're
In
vaccinated.
June. And it proves they're vaccinated. So, had a dog bite in Cornwall. The person was tricky to get a hold of. And I looked to see if the dog was licensed, because I would have known then whether it had a up-to-date rabies, but it wasn't licensed. Another time, same kind of thing, and the people were freaking out, understandably so, because rabies, if you get bitten and you don't have your shots, you're going to die from it. Are there rabid dogs in Connecticut? Not very often, because they have their shots. It's not something that's, where it's not like in the 30s when I used to read about the dog catcher going after these, all these rabid dogs on the street and all uplifting books for a 10-year-old. But it's not that way. In fact, I don't think there's been a rabid dog bite in more than 40 years in the state.
Wow.
People have gotten it, usually it's from bats or something like that. And I think it's only been once or twice. But anyway, so it proves that. And it's also the quickest way for me to get a dog back. So say your dog's licensed, the electric fence is down from a storm and your dog takes off. Somebody finds it and they call me. And they don't have the microchip reader there. I have it in my car. But I can say, but they say the dog's licensed. Oh, what's the year? What's the date? I look it up and I can call you and say, did you know that Fido is down the road? Oh, he was right beside me a few minutes ago. And he's safe. These people have it. I could go and get the dog and charge them the $15 pickup fee. But most of the time, if it's a habitual person, yeah, I'll say, hold that dog. And I'll do that.
Do you have to put the rabies tag on them too? Or
Legally in Connecticut, they should be wearing their license and their rabies tag. Now, cats should have their rabies, but they don't need to wear a tag. And they're not licensed, so. Another question? Yeah.
I know this isn't your purview, but you have so many years' experience. What's your position on the Great Mountain Lion controversy?
Jim saw one. Now, too many people I know that I trust have seen them. And especially my husband. When I was in college, one of my first colleges, they had a cougar as a mascot, and they had a live cougar because its owner got it when it was young, and he was killed in a plane accident, and so the mother donated this cougar to my college. And I was on the cougar guard. I didn't do sports or anything like that, but I was on the cougar guard in college. And we took her in our van, like, to the vet, and we would take her to games and stuff like that. So if anybody's going to know a cougar, it's going to be Jim. And he saw one in Kent. And I've just talked to too many people.
If you have a lot
So
of
yes,
deer,
I believe they're here.
if there are a lot of deer, you're gonna have mountain lions. That's what we've been
So.
told.
And went to a program too,
Yeah.
that had a lot of information. So yes, that's my position, even though I have not seen it.
Nobody ever gets a picture of one though, right?
And I think, somebody saw one recently, and somebody's like, picture? And they were just stunned. Or if you're driving, what are you gonna do?
One was hit by a car down on the Merritt.
Yeah.
Pretty far south.
Yeah, and I forget what the reasoning,
Identified.
where that escaped from somewhere or something like that. Other questions? Yeah.
If you're walking on the road and you see a bear,
Mhm.
what do you do? What noises do you make or just?
If you see the bear and it's not watching you,
Yeah.
I would just walk
The other way.
walk the other way, you know, and that really goes for most wildlife. I understand, was it grizzlies?
Well, we
But we don't have to deal with that,
We don't
so
have to-
we won't worry. You know, there are different things for different wildlife, but that's the best thing. The noises, it's funny, we went hiking, I went with my grandchildren and my daughter up in Salisbury to Lion's Head the other day, and she brought a bear bell, just in case. At one point, the 8-year-old says, "I'm tired of walking." And Bart was like, we could see the peak of where we were going. She says, "You can sit right here and wait, we'll give you the bell." She didn't go for it, she came. We also got they call it hazing. We have some kind of a horn that you blow through and it's loud. I have an app on my phone, but it's not, I don't think that it's very loud, if I recall.
Very fine.
What's it under, bear call?
No, it's just an air horn.
This is just how you want to be seen by the bear.
Right.
You're on your phone right now. Where's that at?
Never mind. What, seriously?
Not very loud.
Not very loud. Would surprise me, might scare a dog. Thank you.
More visually after a little.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So, you know, that's what same thing with coyotes. It's the same kind of hazing kit that you would get.
If a bear has
How
cubs.
many wolf sightings are there? 'Cause I
There are
saw-
no wolves. There are
I
no
saw
wolves.
one about 3 months ago, walking down the hill.
It wasn't a wolf.
It was.
And those that I truly believe, because probably all the animal control office, we're all into this stuff. Anything that's related to a dog, we're into. We're into the coyote stuff and the wolves. I have friends that have gone down to, I think it's Katona, where you can spend the night with the wolves, and we all love these wild dogs. And so there's been a lot of research, a lot of, we do have, and coy dogs is a myth as well, because a coyote and a dog are not going to mate on purpose. You really have to make that happen. Same thing with the wolf hybrids. So wolf hybrids are not allowed in the state. They're illegal.
But my dog weighs about 90 pounds, and this animal was about twice as big. It was huge. Looked exactly like a gray wolf. I've seen pictures. It was
I don't even
amazing.
think a gray wolf would be that big. They're way bigger than a coyote, but they're just, it had to be some kind of mix, maybe a husky mix or
Kid
something.
like that.
Mixed with something bigger possibly. But they really, you know, I have a friend, it's a pretty scary one. You go to a seminar for our CEUs, for our continuing education for animal control, and the speaker is a former student that I had not so long ago. But she's done a lot of research too with the wolves and the wolf hybrids. And they just aren't, they're not here. It's just coyotes and dogs.
That's what they say about the...
Mountain.
I do know that,
That's because of the
but,
hunting. If they find a mountain lion, they have to shut the hunting down for 50-mile radius. And I don't know what duration that is. But they won't do that because they want money from hunting licenses.
we are being recorded. They're gonna come.
Yes, that's fine.
But I agree, I don't believe there are wolves.
You know what?
I don't believe there are wolves yet. Could they come as climate change and all things are changing? They might wind up coming, but at this point, I don't believe. Then that's fine.
Sorry, Leah.
Sure. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, and thank you for the help.
Sure.
David.
Time for one more question.
Yeah.
If an animal is impounded to where it is impounded,
Great question. So for all my other towns, I have a dog pound in each. What we do in Cornwall is we have the little guild. So, but I don't want people calling the little, sometimes people stop by the little guild and say, I have this dog. So we have an agreement, they let me know right away and I deal with it, because it's not their job. Their job is to take care of the dogs they have. But they will, if I put a dog in there, they will take care of it, which is a big plus, because all the other pounds I have to go to every day and take care of the dog. So they will take care of it. But that's a specific run for a dog that I might pick up. And so I would take it there. And I have the secret code to even get in at night. So far, I haven't had to do, the only dog I had to impound a dog that was, had bitten and needed to be quarantined outside of the home. And because the dog was tricky to deal with, the first selectman, Sharon, let me use the Sharon pound for that dog. And the people knew it was there. Normally, you wouldn't want to do that because, you know, you should keep the dog in the same town. I would not normally do that, but the Sharon pound had a better facility than actually the Little Guild, which is why you need to donate money to the Little Guild, because they're building a new place and then they'll have a quarantine run or more. Yeah.
So for injured wildlife like raccoons or bears, we would have to call the DEP.
You would call the DEP.
So we should have a phone number for that somewhere.
And the problem with the adult, like an adult raccoon, it would need to be put down. An injured bear, honestly, if it's not acting aggressively, if you see one limping, there was one in Canaan, I think it had like 3 cubs and all. If they put it down, then you have 3 orphan cubs. They're not going to fix it. There's no bear rehabilitation allowed in this state. So what I say is, leave it alone, let nature take its course, and maybe it'll be okay. And I think they saw it like the next year too. Still, you know, it was injured, but if the animal's in pain, obviously you would want to put down, and that would be the DEP or the police. It's the babies that are usually what people will deal with, and there's a list actually on the DEP website of wildlife rehabilitators in the state and what they specialize. Audubon's fantastic. It's just people tend to not leave a message, and if they don't leave a message, then they don't hear back from Audubon. They think they can't get through, but it's all, they have rehabilitators there. But an injured, you would just report it because there's nothing I can do because that's not my job. But Brad Hedden does have his license. I was talking to him this morning and he said, I'll call you later, because I said, are you just doing Cornwall? Will you do Sheridan and Salisbury? And he said, I'll call you later. He didn't have a chance to. But he's not planning to do, like, he's not going to, some nuisance wildlife people, that's their thing, that's their job. They'll go and they'll get the bats, or they'll get the squirrels out of your attic, and they'll do all that kind of thing. I think he is leaning toward just doing, you know, the emergency kind of thing. You know, say a raccoon that needs to be put down.
Living in the woods
like
that happens.
So I'm not making any promises, but I'm excited that he just got his license through the state.
Oh, good.
So that's fun.
When you were hitting 7, any closing thoughts?
I would say what I really want people to, I still haven't gotten over last winter, not this past winter, but the winter before, in 4 different towns, 3 towns of mine and another town, had elderly dogs that disappeared, and some of them were found and some of them weren't, but you knew they were dead. Because nobody's going to steal your dog and keep your 14-year-old dog. And because they let them out without supervision. And it breaks my heart because that's unnecessary. Dogs escape. I know, I've had dogs escape. It's very embarrassing. But it hasn't happened recently, but it did happen. But to let your dog out and And they get senile, you know, they get dementia, some of them, or they're deaf and blind. I think all four were deaf and kind of
They lose
blind.
their sense of smell.
And they're gone now. And one of them was suspected to fall in the river because the person lived near it. And that, to me, is heartbreaking because we're responsible for our pets. We're responsible for keeping them safe. And whether it takes a leash or a fence or a dog walker, sometimes people can't move well, you're in a walker or something, well then maybe a little fence. Call somebody can help. We offered to help that one guy, he was able to do it on his own, but
2 in the morning, we fetched one out of the lake.
there was that too. Yeah, it wasn't even my job. But we went up because she couldn't go find her dog, and we found it, unfortunately. But,
That's poignant closing on, we should take care of our animals better.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And just there's some snacks and beverages, so please stay.
And I'm always available. If I do not have cards, I can bring my old cards that I got. There's some free deal, so I got it, I think when I got Sharon. And it has my home number that I don't even pick up. So I'm all over Facebook. I have my Animal Patrol page. You can find my phone number there. And feel free.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.